A missing Charlotte woman who seems to have simply vanished. She works for U.S. Airways at Charlotte Douglas International, and now investigators say they have tracked her to South Carolina.
From my understanding, she got people to stay down that way, and if she went that way, somebody would know she was coming.
Friends and family are stepping up their efforts in hopes of finding Nikki Mcphatter. They are distributing flyers like this one, also working with America's Most Wanted, and they plan to put this picture on billboards now in 2 states.
Someone knows something, as in all the cases that we've worked on, and it just takes that little bit of incentive, and hopefully we will hear something soon.
Good day, my beautiful people. I am the Mysterious Black Bandit, and welcome to your soon-to-be #1 true crime / tragic events channel on YouTube. Now, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but one of the hardest things to do is to sit up here on this camera, potentially in front of thousands of people, and tell these stories. But one thing that I know is the easiest thing to do is hitting that like and subscribe and sharing this video. Now, let me ask y'all this. How many of you have ever tried online dating, and if you have, did it work out? As of July of 2022, there are over 366 million people using online dating services in the US, searching for their potential soulmate. Adults between the ages of 18 and 29 stated that they met their current spouse or partner there. Now, although this has become a very common thing to do, don't become too blind by love, and make sure you're doing that full background check on the person you're seeing. Now, this will bring us to the story of Nikki Mcphatter. Nikki was a 30-year-old goal-oriented woman who always seemed to know the next step. Right after graduating from high school, Nikki decided she wanted to see the world, and the easiest way to do that was to join the military. After several years of serving her country in the Navy, she returned to the civilian life and got a job working as a ticket agent for the U.S. Airways of Charlotte Douglas International Airport in North Carolina. Now, Nikki was a very adventurous person, so on her downtime, she would often take trips to different places and would also go skydiving. At the time, Nikki was a single 30-year-old successful woman who enjoyed getting out and having fun, but she soon realized time was passing her by and she wanted someone she could come home to. Of course, she had been dating around and became very close with some of these fellas, but they just weren't what she was looking for in a man. During this time, online dating was just becoming popular, and she felt that this may be the way to go if she wanted to find that perfect mate. So she decided it was time to explore her options and joined this online dating website called tag.com to see if she could find Mr. Right. Now, among a few of her matches, she came across a man named Theodore Manning IV, who was the same age as her and served in the U.S. Air Force before taking a job at a power plant in Columbia, South Carolina. From the start, Nikki and Theodore hit it off. Every other weekend, she would drive a good 90 minutes just to see him and spend some time with him. At the beginning of their relationship, everything was going pretty well. They would go out to eat, to the movies, and go hang out at these lounges in the area. But as time went on, Nikki started to notice one thing she didn't like about old Teddy. He was a ladies' man. Around that time, Nikki, who was 30 years old, wasn't looking for someone she could have a good time with or sleep around with. She was looking for a soulmate or a potential husband she could grow old with and have children. But Theodore, he wasn't looking to settle down, at least not with one woman. Old Teddy was one of these smooth-talking brothers that had already been married and had a child through that relationship. So, of course, he wanted to play the field a little bit and, have a little fun. Later on in their relationship, Nikki confirmed that he was not only dating her, but he was simultaneously dating several other women as well. So this was a no-go for Nikki, and after dating this man on and off for about 3 months, Nikki decided it was time to end this relationship so she could find someone who only wanted just her and to settle down with. But instead of just calling him and breaking everything off, she wanted to meet up with him just one more time so she could tell him to his face she no longer wanted him. On May 6, 2009, Nikki told her sister LaToya that she was going to drive down to Columbia to retrieve some jewelry she gave to Theodore to have repaired for her, and to tell him she no longer wanted to be with his low-down self. But unfortunately, this would prove to be a fatal mistake. Throughout that whole day, LaToya waited and waited for Nikki to call her to tell her how everything went down, but she didn't receive a single call throughout that whole day. Now, Nikki wasn't too open about her relationship with Theodore to anyone. not even her sister. So the only thing her sister knew was that she was dating a man she met online. So although LaToya was a little iffy about their relationship, she didn't panic. As the day had passed, still with no call from her sister, LaToya continued to try to think positive about the situation because maybe LaToya had just taken a random trip, or maybe they made up and she was just too embarrassed to call and let her know. After a week had gone by, LaToya received a call from Nikki's boss asking is everything okay with Nikki and if she is coming back to work soon, because they haven't heard or seen her all week. Nikki wasn't the type of person to just miss work, especially without notice, so this is when things started to worry LaToya. She immediately picked up the phone and started blowing her phone up, but after the 20th call or so with no answer, she reached out to the police department and filed a missing persons report for her sister Nikki. For 3 long weeks, authorities, family members, and friends worked jointly to search for Nikki before learning the tragic news of what happened to her. During the search, investigators had spoken with Nikki's family and friends to see if they had any leads to give them on her whereabouts. This is when they told them the last time they spoke with Nikki, she was on her way to break up with her boyfriend, Theodore. So once they were able to identify Theodore, investigators headed straight to Columbia to question him to see if he had a clue as to where Nikki could have been. Now, when they finally talked to him, he did say he saw her on that day between 1 and 1:30 p.m., but he stated Nikki had got upset and told him she was going somewhere and just left without telling him where she was going. Then check this out. When they asked what he was to Nikki, this dude tried to downplay the relationship and said, yeah, we're just friends with benefits, that's it and nothing else. So they took his little statement but continued to dig for more information, and it wasn't long before their suspicions was heightened. Shortly after the investigation, they received a notification that Nikki's ATM card had been used in South Carolina, so they went and gathered all the surveillance footage in the area, and when they watched it, it showed a black male that looked like Theodore using the card several different times, eventually removing over $500 from Nikki's account. Now, after watching the surveillance videos a few times, they confirmed that it was indeed Theodore, but he was getting into the passenger side of a gold Chevrolet Lumina that was not Nikki's. The very next day, the police obtained a search warrant for Theodore's home and discovered receipts for cleaning supplies, including bleach, that had been purchased on May 7th, which was just a day after Nikki had disappeared. When they asked him why all this was purchased, he responds in this narcissistic tone saying, "Oh yeah, I had went and bought those cleaning supplies for one of my other female friends, Kendra Goodman." So after he told the investigators that, they became a bit interested in who this other person was and wondered if she had any information on Nikki's disappearance. The next day, when Kendra came in for questioning, the first thing they noticed was she was driving a gold Chevrolet Lumina, the exact car that was on the surveillance footage. Now, of course, Theodore had warned her about the police questioning him, so she already knew what to say when they asked her about the cleaning supplies and everything else. So when they started questioning her, she stated she knew nothing about Nikki being missing and stated her and old Teddy were just casual partners with no strings attached, meaning she was another one of his women he used for sexual relations. Now, Kendra was very suspicious and nervous when answering these questions, so the investigators weren't too convinced of her story, so they told Kendra, since everything you're telling us is the truth, you won't have a problem with taking the polygraph test, will you? Without a lawyer in sight, Kendra agrees to taking this test, and it immediately showed signs that she wasn't being honest, so they continued to press her, and eventually she started talking. She said on May 6th, the same day Nikki came to visit, Theodore told her to come by the house. She stated when she arrived, he was outside working on a black Honda who he said belonged to a friend. As they sat there, he asked her if she wanted the rims off the car, but after she refused, he then asked her to follow him to deliver this car to the friend and give him a ride back to his house. They then drove to a remote area on Peach Road in Fairfield County, where he asked her to wait in the church parking lot while he drove the car down this dirt road. As she was sitting there, she heard a loud explosion coming from the area from which he drove to. Then a few seconds later, she seen Theodore running from the dirt road. Once he got in the car, she stated she could smell gasoline. So she asked him if he was the cause of that explosion. At first, he claimed that he didn't have anything to do with it, but as Kendra just stared at him, he told her that they were burning trash or just burning stuff back there and just brushed it off as if it was nothing and asked her to take him back to the house. So after she explained everything to the investigator, she agreed to take them to the area where she thought the car might have been. Once they arrived, the investigators were horrified by what they found. The vehicle had been completely burned and even the rims had melted onto the car. And when they approached the vehicle, they could see the skeletal remains of a charred human body inside the trunk. As they got closer, they verified it was a human body that looked like it had a bullet hole in the back of the skull. Kendra, who had driven to the scene with the detectives, got out the car and immediately started vomiting in disgust. With the body being burned so badly, the remains had to be sent in for a dental record just to identify the body, but just a week or so later, the results returned and it was confirmed to be the remains of Nikki Mcphatter. With this information, the investigators felt they had enough evidence to charge Theodore, but first, they wanted to see if he would confess to it. Not even an hour later, the police went back to Theodore's house and arrested him, then took him in for questioning. When they asked him again what had happened on that day, at first he tried to stick with the same story, but after they told him Kendra had taken them to the car with Nikki's remains, he finally started talking. He told them that on May 6th, Nikki came to visit him and to ask what he really wanted out of their relationship. Then he stated that he stressed to her that he was not looking for anything serious and she was just a friend with benefits. Nikki got super upset, looked around and found a bag with a loaded handgun in it, then started waving it around like she wanted to shoot him. Afterwards, he told her to stop playing and ran over and took the gun from her. But when he was pulling it away, she turned around and the gun went off. So while she was lying there on the floor, he panicked and called Kendra to come over and help with the situation. Now, regardless of Theodore's story, the evidence showed that his version of these events was a lie, plus the police already had a witness to back up everything. So on May 30th, Theodore Manning IV was arrested and taken to jail for the murder of Nikki Mcphatter. When their trial finally started, Theodore's lawyers admitted that he was the one that fired the shot, but it was in self-defense. Now, although he pled guilty to the murder, he tried to place the blame all on Kendra, saying she was the mastermind behind disposing the body. He stated the day Nikki was accidentally killed, him and Kendra went and bought cleaning supplies, and she helped clean up the crime scene in his home. He continued and said, Kendra knew Nikki's body was in the trunk of that car when she followed him out to that dirt road in Fairfield County. Then he claimed she was the one who told him they should get the money out of Nikki's bank account with her ATM card. Now, the prosecutors believe it was a malicious, cold-blooded murder, and Theodore tried to cover up his crime, and Kendra was just as guilty because they felt that she knew who was in that car, plus every time they caught her in a lie, she would come up with a whole different story. Theodore's defense team also felt that Kendra had to know what had happened because after they had finished getting the money out of her bank account, her and Theodore went back to his place and had sexual relations. Now, when Kendra was questioned about her involvement in the murder, she stuck to her same story and said she had no idea a body was in the back of that vehicle and she never saw any blood or a dead body in the bedroom of Theodore's home. At the end of the trial, after a 2-day deliberation, the jury eventually found Theodore Teddy Manning guilty of only voluntary manslaughter. He was sentenced to 30 years behind bars at the Lee Correctional Institution in Bishopville, South Carolina, and will be eligible for release in 2034. As for Kendra Goodman, since she testified against Theodore in court, she was found guilty of being an accessory to the murder and only had to serve a few years in prison. Now, I'm sure Nikki had no idea who the real Theodore Manning was, and when you think about it, it seemed that she was investing way more time and energy into their relationship than he was. After all, she was the one driving back and forth from Charlotte to Columbia to see him, while he was just sitting back dating all these women, and probably even met more women on that same dating site. In the era that we live in today, stories like this should definitely highlight the dangers of online dating. With all the different technologies and AI we have today, people can change the way that they look, spin fake personas for themselves, and present themselves to you as this perfect mate. Although this is the new way of meeting people, please watch out for those red flags I gave you on that last video. All right, family, that will bring this video to an end. If you enjoyed content like this, go ahead and hit that like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss out on any of these good videos when I upload. I hope you all had a wonderful day, and until next time, stay mysterious, my friends.